Baddies, babes, and gents, welcome back to the channel. We have got to talk about this Diddy trial today. Cassie dropped some bombshell testimony that had jurors shaking their head. We're going to get into all of that and more. I am your host, Wisdom's Daughter, and this is Bad Girls Talk. All right, everybody, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. So listen, things are not going necessarily in Diddy's favor. So first we started out the trial with hearing from the security guard at the hotel who was like, listen, I was there, I saw everything, all right? He actually documented what he saw in an email. So let's take a look at that first, and then we'll get into what happened with Cassie Ventura, because we actually have that today. So he says, today, March 5th, 2016, at approximately 11:14 a.m., I received a call from Instant Services, Wanda, stating that she had just gotten a distress call from the 6th floor. Now, that distress call came from Cassie Ventura, okay? He says, I then looked at the cameras to get familiar with the situation on the floor, and all I saw before I took off immediately was a male wearing only a black male, which we know is Diddy, wearing only a towel, walking back and forth. I arrived at the scene at 11:15 a.m. I noticed that the male black man was rapper Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy. I observed Mr. Combs sitting down on the far left of the 6th floor, and the female who was closer to the hallway, which was identified by Diddy as Cece. So Diddy did not give real names. He gave Cassie's name as Cece. I saw the damage that had been done, and I began to diffuse the situation by advising Mr. Combs to understand his status and the safety concerns of our guest. He began yelling at Miss Cece, and I advised both of them to separate from each other, that it wasn't convenient for both of them to continue, especially in the hall, and Diddy was only in a towel. I then proceeded to advise him to return to his room. Guys, listen, before we get into the rest of this, the full unedited video of that hotel incident with Diddy and Cassie is out. It has been released by DOJ. I just released it. I just dropped it on the channel. So after you watch this video, I'll link it down below, and you may be able to click on it and get it above. But listen, make sure you guys check that out, because we got to see the full picture of exactly what Diddy did in that hallway, how he reacted. And this is important. We had seen a piece of it when it was originally released or leaked, as they said, by CNN. But this is important because of what Diddy's defense team, Tenny Garagos, or part of his team, Tenny said in her opening statement. She tried to paint this as just a domestic violence issue, that Cassie was in a relationship with a man that she loved. Nowhere in that video does it look like Cassie is liking getting, her behind whooped, okay, and getting kicked and everything else and getting dragged. I mean, she literally got dragged, all right? But anyway, and then she talks about something about a cell phone. So I may do a separate video later where we will break down that particular video, because if you look, even though you can't hear the audio, and Diddy better be glad that there's no audio, because you know what? His defense wouldn't have a defense if there was audio. And we actually heard exactly what he was saying. But several times he charges after Cassie, and she literally is running away. There's one point where she kind of puts her hand up, and she's, trying to get away from Diddy. She puts her hand out. All right. So here's the rest of the email. So he says he took the elevator down. He saw Miss Cece and advised her that he did not. He says he advised her that I did not want him to see her, so I walked her over to the valet office until her ride got there. Okay, So this security guard is testifying in this document that he was trying to help her. He didn't want Diddy to see her, and so he took her to the valet office so that she could get a ride. I asked her that we would need some information for her to stand by. I walked over to MOD AD's office and advised him of the situation, that I needed him present. We walked over to Miss Cece, and we were unable to locate her. We then went up to the 6th floor and took pictures of the guest lobby, elevator landing, and made our way to the guest room 602. MOD Addy wanted to introduce himself and let him know of the hotel rules, and to advise him that the damages would be charged to his room. Besides that, he probably just wanted to talk to Diddy, see Diddy. Anyway, when Mr. Combs came out, he was about to start yelling, still in his towel. So, and that's the interesting thing about the video, right? So the entire time, Diddy is still wearing this towel. He goes back to the room a few times. The first time, he snatches up Cassie's bags, takes them back to the room. Now, she has a little small purse and another bag that probably has her cell phone, her wallet, her ID. So he literally is making it very difficult, if not impossible, for Cassie to leave. Still wearing, all the while wearing a towel. He comes back from the room several times, had every opportunity to change, and not one time did Diddy put on some clothes. All right, so he says that Diddy was still wearing a towel, but MOD Addy and I stopped him before he did and advised him that we were not there to make it bigger than it already was. He saw MOD Addy holding his phone, and he automatically assumed that he was being recorded, so he grabbed his hand and then grabbed his hand and told him to back off and took his hand away from MOD Addy. He was then told no one was recording him, that the safety and the privacy of the guests is important to the hotel, and if he tried to do something like that, he would get kicked out and escorted out of the property by LAPD. He calmed himself down, apologized, and stated it was just that I don't want to lose anything, and I can lose it all. So this is one of the statements that came out in court. And I'm sure if Diddy does take the stand and the prosecution has a chance to cross-examine, I'm pretty sure they're going to ask him what he meant by that, right? Because for me, that's telling. It's just that I don't want to lose anything and I can lose it all. I think he was talking about his career, his business, his fame, his money, his status, his reputation. Well, he's already losing it all, and he's lost. If not, I would venture to say he hasn't lost his money necessarily, but everything else, yeah. He calmed himself down and apologized and stated that it's just that he didn't want to lose anything because he could lose it all. And we assured him that all we need for him to do is calm down and not have any more scenes from that time until he was ready to check out. They left the scene and resumed normal operations. So that's when he says that Diddy began to offer him a bribe. You take care of this. I got you. Let's go to my room. I then responded with, sir, I know who you are, while extending my arm to him to shake his hand, and said, all I ask is for respect for the guests and myself. So do me a favor. Let's return you to your room. He got up and began to walk to his room, and as we made our way down the north hallway, Miss Cece was behind us coming from the south hallway. You can see all this in the video. Mr. Combs noticed her while turning back and began to raise his voice. I then told him that if he didn't respect the guests, he would be escorted off the property. We walked over to his room 602. And when he went inside, and Miss Cece was told to leave by Mr. Combs, so she did just that. So at this point, now that the security is there, he tells Cassie to leave, and she does. Mr. Combs opens the door and brought out a currency band wrapped around $100. Wrapped around about $100. I venture to say that it was probably much more than that, but all he can make up was a $100 bill. He says, hang on. He says, he then told me again, thank you, and said, you take care of this and I take care of you. I declined the money and told Mr. Combs that all we needed was for him to stay in his room until checkout, which is today. I left the scene at 11:25. And then there's a note here that says, we will be conducting extra patrols until his checkout, which will be taking pictures. Okay, hold on a second. He says, we will be conducting extra patrols until his checkout, in which we will be taking pictures to have the room left at the moment. Here are the pictures that MOD Addy took of the guest lobby. Please stand by until we all have pictures. Mr. Combs has not checked out yet. Okay, so there's a note that Diddy had not checked out yet. And the security guard did an excellent job, if you look at the video, de-escalating that particular scene. He did a great job there. When it comes to his writing skills, well, that, leaves a lot to be desired. But anyway, so we get the gist of it, okay? But it corroborates exactly what Cassie said. So here you have another witness corroborating exactly what we saw in the video and exactly what Cassie said. And they were concerned that Diddy was not going to be compliant, and so they had to have additional patrols, right? So here's some of the things that Cassie talked about in her testimony, because the defense tried to paint this whole situation like a domestic violence, a relationship of two jealous people and one jealous man who's flawed. What we saw in that video was more than just a flaw. What we saw in that video is a clear indication of abuse. If Diddy was 55 in that video and Cassie was 17, for example, let's say 18, let's just say 18, so legal enough to make her own decisions. But if she was 18 and he was 55, right, we probably would be looking at this different. If this wasn't Diddy and this wasn't Cassie and this was just a video that went viral, we would probably be saying someone needs to help that girl. So why is it any different just because Cassie is a celebrity? I'm not sure. But anyway, here are some of the things that Cassie talked about. So she said that Diddy kept her in a cycle of abuse and exploitation by threatening to release videos of her encounters with these escorts, which Diddy set up. He orchestrated everything. He planned everything. He dictated everything. Just like he kind of dictated to Cassie what she should wear, how she should wear her hair. And Diddy, come on, what's up with the blow-up swimming pool in the hotel room filled with heated baby oil? Not just any baby oil, but heated baby oil? Really, Diddy? That's what we're doing? You know what? I can't. Heated baby oil, okay? Because that's how specific things had to be. Cassie said that, everyone had to be oiled up. He wanted everybody glistening. That's what he wanted, okay? He wanted everybody slipping and sliding. That's what he wanted. And apparently he wanted to slip and slide. But anyway, so on the second day, because now this is day 2 of Cassie's testimony, okay? So we heard about what she endured from the escort, about her having to endure golden showers and things like that. I mean, just that alone, her recounting how, she choked and it was just, yeah. So she says that she said, even though she loathed, right, just totally, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, when you just really, really don't want to do something. So absolute loathing. So she says that even though she loathed having these parties, these freak offs with these strangers and having to sleep with them, she couldn't just reject Diddy's demands because he would make her look like exactly what it looked like, right? He would make her look like a hoe. He would make her look like she's for the streets. She said, I feared for my career, I feared for my family, and it was just embarrassing. It's horrible, it's disgusting, and no one should do that to anyone, right? Clearly, Diddy did not love Cassie Ventura. And even the defense, in Tenny's opening statement, she even said that at Kim Porter's funeral, Diddy talked about how Kim Porter was his soulmate and that there was no one else like her, no one else, above her, like she couldn't be replaced. So it's clear that he did not love Cassie Ventura, but he absolutely used her. Also, the prosecutor showed the jury 5 still photos from the videos that were recovered from electronic devices that Cassie provided to investigators. So Cassie said the images showed her with these escorts at various stages of the encounter, the freak offs, which sometimes lasted for days. And that's, I guess, the realization that Cassie was having to, or being coerced, forced, pressured, right, blackmailed into having to sleep with so many men and to have to do these freak offs, which lasted days at a time, no sleep, no rest, alcohol and everything else. One juror's eyes widened and another shook his head from side to side. Okay, so it was definitely some sympathy from the jurors in the courtroom today. Prosecutors accused Diddy of exploiting his status as a powerful music executive, which, that's kind of been the talk of the town for quite some time now, that Diddy was very powerful. And what Cassie did today was expose the dark side of what it was like being in a relationship with him. So first day was a very emotional day. All right. And then day 2, she comes with the gusto. So she talks about how she had to use makeup to cover her bruises, how she had to wear sunglasses to hide a black eye for a premiere that she had to attend. She said that she sneaked into a popcorn closet at the movie theater to switch dresses for an after party so that the bruises on her legs wouldn't be seen. She recounted another situation in 2013 when she was getting ready to go to a Drake concert or music festival in Canada. And Cassie said Diddy scuffled with her friends and threw her into a bed frame so hard that she sustained a significant gash above her left eye. You threw her so hard she busted her face above her left eye, Diddy? Damn. His security personnel brought her to a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills to get the wound stitched up. So we often hear her talking about, I think his name is D-Rock. I wonder if we're going to hear from him, if he's going to be subpoenaed, because he seemed to be around for a lot of this abuse, or a lot of it, and can probably corroborate, also what she's saying. She said that she texted Diddy a photo of her injured face and wrote, "So you can remember." And Diddy replied, "You don't know when to stop. You pushed it too far and continue to push. Sad." So Diddy is justifying his behavior? No, Diddy, that just won't do. That just will not do. Again, Cassie talked about how the freak offs basically became a job. She was no longer working on her music career, but she was being used as a slave for Diddy's pleasure. She was being used as a pleasure slave. I can't even say that. Say that fast 3 times. She was being used as a pleasure slave for Diddy, and for his sick fantasies. She said she felt empty, and she took things in order to cope. She engaged in recreational adult candies to cope. She said it was something that she hated doing, but she didn't feel like she had much choice. She said that she also developed an opioid addiction from using different adult candies as a coping mechanism, and she will recover by getting IV fluids and massages. Diddy. All right, let's actually look at I'm going to go over some of the questions that she was asked in the courtroom. Okay, so here's how everything started. So Judge Subramanian comes into the courtroom, all rise, the jurors enter. He reminds everyone that they're still under oath. And the assistant U.S. attorney, Johnson, I believe it's Emily Johnson, she asked if she can approach the witness, and the judge tells her yes. And then she says, "Miss Ventura, I just handed you 2 drives. What's on them?" And she says, "Messages and photos from my devices." And so the judge later says, we have a witness waiting in the back. Produce them before the cross-examination starts. You can email me cases during the trial day. Let's get moving. Let's get Miss Ventura back. All right. And then he kind of welcomes her back. The judge ends up taking a break pretty early. He says, we're going to take a break to change some things in the courtroom. So during the break, Diddy sat at the defense table with his lawyer, Xavier Donaldson, leaning down and talking to him. And then the prosecution asked for a sidebar, and they had the little sidebar. All right. Then they continue. So Cassie is asked by the prosecution, when would you take Valium before freak off? And she says, when I had anxiety. Diddy's driver was bringing me Valium, and I think his name was Raheem. So Cassie says, I wrote only Paul available or Jake, the white guy, but he can't do until 11. The other guy can do earlier. It's just one more person knowing our secret. So then the prosecutor, so she's talking about when she had to, when Diddy made her schedule these escorts, these male escorts for their FOs. Okay. So the prosecution says, well, what do you mean? She says the FOs. And then she says, what is SLS? And then Cassie says, it's a hotel in Hollywood. Cassie says, Diddy went through my phone during a time when he freaked out and he found an email. Prosecution says, about what? She says, taking my toiletry bag to Scott's the next day. Diddy put a wine opener in his hand and threatened me. I called Scott on a burner phone. And the prosecution says, well, prosecutor says, where did you go? Then Cassie is later asked, did Diddy come to the hotel where she was staying? And Cassie says, yes. And he beat me up and he called me names. My face was bruised. So then there's a photo that's shown, and Cassie is asked who it is. She says, this is Scott Mescudi, also known as, or Mescudi, also known as Kid Cudi. We dated in 2011. So the prosecutor asks Cassie, how did Diddy find out? She says, my phone. So then Cassie's asked what happens next. She said, Diddy came to her house and he awed her on her living room floor. She said his eyes were black. It was taking something from you. And then the prosecutor says, okay, well, you cried. And then what did Diddy do? Cassie says he continued and he finished, he finished what he was doing inside of her. And then he got up and left. And then Cassie's asked about what happened in August of 2018. She says, we were having a closure conversation at a restaurant in Malibu, and he was trying to convince me to go to Burning Man. Prosecutor says, were you seeing anyone? She says, yeah, my now husband. So these are just, some of the conversation. But again, just hearing Cassie being thrown so hard that, she cuts her face above her eye. I mean, if she had hit that bed frame just a little bit differently, she probably would have lost her eye. So then there's something going on. So the judge says, well, whatever's happening, he says, we can do it in the robing room. The prosecutor says the defendant would have to be present. He says so in the courtroom. And then they ask a question if it should be sealed or not. And then the prosecutor says counsel for victim 1 would like to be heard. The judge says to Mr. Wigdor, I see your hand. And then he says, we are entitled to notice. So here's another thing here's what's been going on. Diddy is trying to control even this trial while he is on trial for absolute heinous crimes. He's still trying to maintain his control. And so through his legal team, which is going to do whatever he asked them to do. And so what they were trying to say is that Cassie, is that her civil attorney should not be allowed contact with her. is what they were saying. And there's a lot of statements that were filed just yesterday on the docket of them going back and forth, back and forth. And then the defense said, well, no, we didn't say that he couldn't have any communication with her. I mean, if he's just asking her how her family is, how she's coping, logistics, how she's getting, back and forth to the court, then that's fine. But we don't want him talking to her about any advice legally in this particular case. And so there's a lot of back and forth as to, what the outcome of that was going to be. And he's like, listen, I need to be able to talk to my client. Now, listen, there's something else going down. And this is the last thing that I'll talk about because there'll be more to come on that. Victim number 4 has filed a request or several requests through her lawyer for permission to use a pseudonym. She does not want to testify under her legal name. Whoever victim number 4 is, she has not publicly spoken about this. She hasn't really told friends about this. And the concern is her being re-traumatized. She's, already taking the stand, but that she doesn't want her name in public record, right? She acknowledges that social media content creators, the media public, they're probably going to figure out who she is. And we will. But she's hoping that if she's using a pseudonym, that at least the public will try to respect her wishes to try to stay anonymous. And so she's been subpoenaed to provide some emails and some other, documentation. And so we have not figured out who victim number 4 is, but apparently her story is probably even more nightmarish than Cassie Ventura. It's supposed to be really bad. The document is heavily redacted. So it's really hard to figure out what's what. As a matter of fact, I'll pull that up really quickly and just show you guys that particular document. Okay, so here is Exhibit A. Here is Exhibit A. This document was filed again just yesterday, but it was dated April 23rd. So the government respectfully writes in response to the court's April 22nd, 2025 order seeking additional information regarding the risk of harm to victim 4, were she to testify under her own name. Those harms which are detailed in the declarations from her counsel attached hereto as Exhibit A. The victim wishes to testify under a pseudonym. The risk of harm to victim otherwise, including psychological, emotional, and professional harms of publicly talking about blank, more than justify the use of a pseudonym. Now, the interesting thing is some victims have been granted permission to use a pseudonym and some haven't. So we're not really sure how they are determining who's allowed to use a pseudonym and who isn't. However, let's take a look at this exhibit. So let me see. As a matter of fact, let me share my screen. Okay, so here's exhibit. This is Exhibit A, right? And again, this document is heavily redacted, but I will read some of it. And then, y'all, we have to figure out who victim number 4 is. Okay, so I, Michael Ferreira, declare under penalty of perjury upon information and belief as follows. I am a member of the bar of the state of New York, partner at the law firm Heckler Fink LLP, and counsel to victim number 4 is captioned above. And so, again, they are requesting a motion of limine to protect the identities of this particular victim. And there was an order for her to furnish evidence to support an actual risk of harm to that victim if she were to testify without the protection of a pseudonym. Victim number 4 has already endured substantial emotional and psychological trauma as a result of the experience about which she will testify at defendant Diddy Sean Combs' upcoming trial. As a result of this trauma, victim number 4 has struggled with, and then it's heavily redacted. Without the protection of a pseudonym, victim 4 faces a substantial risk of additional irreparable harm to her prospects of employment, blank, and close personal relationships, and not to mention her safety and emotional and psychological recovery process, which continues to this day. Contrary to Mr. Combs' assertions, victim number 4 is neither ambivalent about nor interested in testifying using her real name, and she seeks the protection of a pseudonym to prevent the actual and specific threat of harm described below. I understand that victim's testimony will almost certainly involve blank. It's redacted. Victim 4's anticipated testimony in this regard is obviously extremely sensitive in nature and would result in humiliating and re-traumatizing publicity if victim 4 is required to testify using her real name. Victim 4 has never spoken publicly about or otherwise publicized blank. Victim 4 acknowledges the possibility that the media or public will connect the dots and identify her, and we will. But even if the protection of a pseudonym does not make it impossible for someone to identify her, Victim 4 also hopes that the clear preference to keep her identity secret will prompt the media and public to respect her decision and not publish her name, even if they are able to do so. Now, that's going to be a difficult one. You have so many people covering this case. And I mean, that's like tea. As soon as one person finds out who this victim is, it's going to spread like wildfire. We've got so many content creators and other journalists in that courtroom. That's going to be a hard one. She says that she's made progress. The prospect of testifying about her experiences has triggered significant anxiety as she revisits the most traumatic experiences of her life. If victim number 4 is required to testify about these traumas without the protection of a pseudonym, they're saying that all the progress that she's made will be negatively impacted and that her emotional and psychological anguish will worsen, including because she faces the risk of becoming publicly and permanently associated with the very traumatic circumstances she has spent years trying to move from. I don't know who this person is, if it's job related, maybe the kind of work that she does, there may be a concern there, but apparently whatever happened to her has inflicted serious emotional and physical damage upon this victim. But if she were forced to testify again without the protection of a pseudonym, all of her efforts to recover will be hampered. Finally, she is legitimately fearful of the substantiated risk of harassment and reprisal from Mr. Combs and his supporters if she is forced to testify without the protection of a pseudonym. So some of the things that they're concerned about is Diddy, who's already been found to have engaged in numerous instances of witness tampering, harassments, both directly and with the assistance of individuals operating in his direction. And don't think because Diddy is in jail that he's lost his contacts. He still has people working for him. And we still have not heard from victim number 3, Gina Hume. People have been joking that she's probably on a beach somewhere. If you ask me, I think Diddy got to her and I think he paid her off. I think he paid her off. I think he paid her hush money. That's what I think. It's just my opinion. So victim number 4 says that kind of harassment is very familiar. Okay. As a result of her abuse and trauma, she maintains a constant fear that blank is redacted and that this fear of reprisal is so acute that victim 4 blank and then blank, 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 blank. If victim 4 is forced to testify using a real name, it would only exacerbate this pattern of harassment. In order to protect her privacy, avoid humiliation, avert harassment, and prevent an adverse impact on her ability to earn income and continue to pursue income blank and continue to pursue emotional and psychological treatment and recovery, she respectfully requests that the court permit her to testify under a pseudonym. Okay. So that document again was filed just yesterday. So a lot going on with this Sean Diddy Combs situation. I said it yesterday. So far, the prosecution is winning. I don't really see how Diddy's going to walk away with a complete not a guilty verdict. He's going to get convicted on something. And the fact that even male jurors are sympathizing with Cassie, excuse me, is a clear indication that things are going in her favor. All right, y'all. So listen, there is more to come. We will continue to follow the Diddy case. I will continue to bring you updates in and outside of the courtroom. So just look out for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications and set them to all so you don't miss out whenever I go live or drop another video like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, y'all.
Just can't get enough of how it make you feel. Oh, I understand, but I can't be what you need. How many more lines do I have to throw till you pick these clues to tell you the truth?
You're listening to the Bad Girls Talk podcast. Subscribe, like, and share.